Hey everyone, welcome to our ultimate Unreal retargeting masterclass tutorial. I'm Sam with Rokoko, and I'm super excited to get into Unreal with you today. Now in this video, we're gonna be working with Rokoko motion capture, but a lot of the principles that we're gonna cover are applicable to all sorts of motion capture workflows. We also just released a video that specifically deals with metahumans because they're kind of their own little thing. And we also have another video about live streaming your motion capture to custom characters in Unreal Engine. So check those out if you're curious about those workflows. Obviously, this is also a very long tutorial. We have chapter markers down below, so feel free to skip ahead to the part that is most relevant to you. And of course, I just want to mention, CG is complicated. There's a lot of different ways to do things. So depending on your situation, some of these things may or may not apply to you. And we've also put a bunch of links in the description below to other tutorials that have helped me on this journey learning about retargeting in Unreal Engine. So in this video, we'll be covering how to properly export your Rokoko motion capture from Rokoko Studio for Unreal. Then we'll go through how to import or batch import multiple animations directly onto the UE4 and 5 mannequins and any UE4 or UE5 compatible characters. We'll go through the IK retargeting system and take a look at some control rig workflows that are better than ever. We'll also look at exporting and retargeting your facial mocap to a live link ARKit capable Unreal character. We also have some essential free assets for you all that's gonna really help out with these workflows. It's a collection of pose assets, control rig assets, and live streaming assets that are gonna make working with motion capture much easier. In particular, in this collection of assets, you can find a procedural IK or inverse kinematic control rig asset that was created by Alberto Flores, who very generously has offered to give it away for free. He is a very talented Unreal developer and Discord mod, so thank you, Alberto, so much for this asset. One of the best parts about this control rig is that it actually has a feature for parenting your hands together, making two-handed guns or objects much easier to work with. You'll be able to find that control rig asset as well as the other free assets on the Rokoko free resources page. There's a link down in the description below, and I recommend going and grabbing that .zip before we get started. And as I said before, we're not going to cover metahumans in this tutorial. We have a separate tutorial that just focuses exclusively on them. So go check that out if you're curious about metahumans. In this tutorial, we're just going to be working with custom characters, Unreal characters, and other characters that you might have found on marketplaces or created yourself. And finally, we have a live stream every Thursday at 11 a.m. PST on YouTube. We're live, you can ask us questions. If you have any questions about this workflow, put them in the comments below. But I also encourage you to check out our YouTube channel for all of the other tutorials we have, because most likely any answers to questions you have will be somewhere on our YouTube. So go check out our live stream or join me on Thursdays. It's a blast. Okay, let's get into it. So let's get started. Here I have some motion capture I've recorded using a SmartSuit Pro 2 and Smart Gloves. You can check out the other tutorials for best practices for getting started making mocap, but at this point we just need to export this out for Unreal. Because I'm in this animation, I could either export out this individual clip, but if we wanted to batch export out a bunch of animations, I'll go back to my main scene, select all the animations I want, and then I can export them all at once. So when it comes to exporting, we're going to be choosing an FBX format as the file format. We're going to make sure that body mesh is checked. This is super important if you want to import motion capture animation into Unreal. And we're also going to check face because in this case, we're using some facial mocap in one of these animations. If you aren't using facial mocap, you can feel free to just leave face unchecked. But again, we're going to be using it. For the override skeleton mesh, we want to select Unreal Engine 4. Next, I keep my FBX format in a binary, and I'm going to leave my frame rate as it is, but make sure to include reference pose, and I'm also going to extract root motion just because we can. I'm also going to turn off use constant key reducer, and I will select use clip start time as time 0. That's just in case we went into any clips and we actually changed the starting input time. But in our case, we didn't. Now let's select where we want to export our mocap out to. In our case, we're going to be putting it right into our little mocap folder here. Select and export clips. Okay, export is finished, and now we're going to open up a fresh Unreal 5.3.1 project. Now, this should work with other Unreal 5 versions, but in this case, we're going to be using 5.3. And when we create our blank project, I'm just going to select a film and video template, blank. I'm going to enable ray tracing because why not? I'm going to be saving this project to our little folder that we have, and I'll call this UE Retarget 001. Now let's create a project. Okay, so now we have our blank project, and there's a couple things that we need to do before getting started anytime we're working with Rokoko motion capture, or really any motion capture. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into add feature or content pack, and we're going to select the third person template and hit add to project. Don't hit cancel, but we'll wait for it to add it. It'll kind of jump into a new folder. We can X out of this. And what's really important in this template pack is that it gives us access to the Unreal mannequins, right? We have the Unreal 4 mannequin, which is what we're going to be using to pull our mocap in. But we also have the UE5 mannequin. And with these mannequins, we get control rigs and retargeting things already built for us. So this is really key. We always want to make sure that this is imported before we import our motion capture. Now, the second thing that we need to do is add the Rokoko resources folder to our project. Again, you can find it in the description below or on the Rokoko free resources page on Rokoko.com. Anytime you work with Rokoko mocap, you want to add this folder to your project, but you should add it after you've added the mannequins. That's because some of the assets in the Rokoko resources folder require those mannequins. So it's just a .zip file, right? We're going to open up WinRAR. We've got our Rokoko resources right here. And I'm going to go and find my Unreal project, which is right here, UE Retarget 001. Go into content. And then we're going to drag our Rokoko resources folder into content. And as soon as we do that, we're going to see it show up right here. Now, sometimes nothing will appear to be in this folder. You just need to do a restart and then all of these assets will appear. Also, a lot of these assets have to do with live streaming. So these assets, for example, these bone maps, they won't even open because we have not enabled the Rokoko plugin because we are not using it in this tutorial, right? That's just for live streaming your mocap. And similarly, this Metahuman base scale pose asset probably won't open right because we haven't imported a Metahuman to our project. What we really want here is this mannequin control rig auto setup. And I like to actually go into this asset, double click and open it, and then just compile it and save it. And that just makes sure that it's all going to be working right. And again, if nothing shows up, you probably just need to do a restart. So I'll close this out, and then the last thing that I'll do is just in our content, top folder, I'm going to create a couple extra folders, mocap, and then we'll create a custom character folder for later in the tutorial, and now we're ready to go. So prep work done, now we can import our mocap. So let's go into our mocap folder, we're going to go to add, import to game, and then we're going to go find our motion capture that we exported. And remember, we batch exported a bunch of animations. I'm going to select all of them, hit open, and now we get a little dialog box here. Now, we're going to actually uncheck import mesh. We don't need to have a mesh for this part of the workflow. If you're importing Mixamo characters or other things that do have a mesh, sometimes you need to check this, but in this case, we're going to leave it blank. Then under skeleton, we are going to go and select the SK mannequin skeleton. This is super important, not the UE5 skeleton, the UE4 skeleton. Automatically, our animation is going to be imported for the exported time. We don't really need to touch anything else, and we're going to hit import all. Ooh, and look at this, right off the bat, we've got our motion capture imported. Look at this, it's imported directly onto the UE4 skeleton, which is just awesome. It's gonna make this process a lot easier. And if we go back to the first frame, we still have an A pose, which will also play a big role. So this is looking really great. And if we even open up our idle facial mocap, although we're not gonna be able to see our facial motion capture on this mannequin, you can see that we do have all the blend shape animations here loaded up, and we're going to be playing around with these in a little bit. So this is really great, and again, any UE4 skeleton compatible character, this should work natively with, essentially. But what if we have a UE5 skeleton compatible character, and we need to get this onto a UE5 skeleton? Well, let's close this out, and what's really nice about that template that we imported earlier is that if we go into, again, characters, mannequin UE4, rigs, we can see that we have a IK retargeter already set up that comes by default for UE4 Manny to UE5 Manny. So let's open this up. Right off the bat, we've got a UE4 mannequin, we've got a UE5 mannequin, and we've got all of our animations. Click on one of them, and this is retargeting great. The facial blend shapes, again, although we can't see them, they are actually on these mannequins, so we don't need to worry about that. And if we want to export out these animations on the UE5 mannequin, I'm just going to select all of the Rokoko motion capture takes that we exported from Rokoko. We're going to go to Export Selected Animations, and then we're going to go to our mocap folder, and we're going to export them there. And look at what we got here. We've got UE4, but then we've also got UE5. So that just is really easy, great, if you need to get your motion capture onto a UE5 mannequin for whatever reason. We're also going to be covering this IK retargeter in more detail later in the video. Let's close all of these out now, we don't really need them. And why this was so cool that we were able to import our mocap directly onto the UE4 skeleton is that we can now use this mocap really easily with UE4 skeleton compatible characters. If we go to the Epic Marketplace, for instance, and we go to Browse, a lot of the characters that you'll find on here are going to be natively compatible with the UE4 skeleton. And in a lot of cases, they're also going to have live link face compatibility, which is going to be really cool because we'll be able to get our facial motion capture onto these characters natively. So I'm going to go to my library where I've already got a few of these characters, and I'm going to add one that has facial blend shapes. You can see this little blue icon here will usually tell you if the characters have the blend shapes or not. We're going to go to Add to Project, and we'll go down to our UE Retarget and Add to Project. If we go back to content, you can see that we now have our character that's been loaded into our project. So let's open up our character. We'll go to Meshes, Characters. In this case, we need to go to Combined, and we're going to select this character right here. And if we go to the animation panel, right off the bat, you can see that we have a bunch of animations available, but these are all stock animations that came with this character. We can't actually see our Rokoko motion capture animations yet. And that's because we need to tell Unreal that this character is compatible with the UE4 skeleton, which it is. To do that, we're going to go to the Skeleton tab. We're going to go to Windows. We're going to go to Asset Details. And then you can see we have this little option for compatible skeletons. We'll hit plus, and then we will select, remember, the SK mannequin skeleton or the UE4 mannequin skeleton. Add it, save. And now if we go back to our animations, we might need to reopen up this tab. You can see that it goes directly to the UE4 mesh. And this is a good thing. We can actually change this if we wanted to. We can add our character, but you can see these are now compatible. So this is really great. Another way to make our characters mesh compatible with the UE4 skeleton, if we don't want to go into the skeleton itself, is we can find our character, we can right click on it, and we can go to Skeleton, Assign Skeleton. And if we're in here, again, we could assign it to the SK mannequin skeleton. You can see it's already assigned here with this little asterisk, but we could do this, hit accept, and that would also make this character and Unreal recognize that this is compatible with the UE4 skeleton and can access our motion capture. So now we can really get into it with this character in Sequencer. So let's drag in our character. Here we go. We're going to go back to the content browser, and I'm going to create a new level sequence. We'll call this mocap. I'm going to add my character into Sequencer. We could also go to plus and add it here. But right off the bat, look at this. We go into animation, we go down. Here are all of our Rokoko animations. We can add it in. If we double click on the animation, it'll zoom the track out, where we can change the out point. And if we hit play, look at this. We've got our mocap animation onto this character. It all looks super good. It's super easy to do. If we want to change the animation out, let's delete this. Go back to frame 0. Let's add some new animation. What do we want? Let's add the wave hello. There we go. Now we've got the wave hello. And you can also see that this character has some physics that aren't being enabled. If we want them to be enabled while not in play mode, we can click on our character, we can go to physics, toggle on simulate physics, but then toggle it off. If we leave it on, it's going to ragdoll in this case, but if we just hit it once, you can see that we now have our physics, and this is looking awesome. And as I said before, this character already has ARKit facial blend shapes. So if we are exporting out facial animation, let's delete this animation. Let's add in our facial mocap take, idle facial mocap. Right off the bat, it's just gonna transfer the animation directly to your character. Super easy. This is a very, I was just doing kind of idly looking around things. I think later in the take, I'm talking a little bit. Yeah, here we go. Talking. I'm surprised. Oh no, don't do that. Wait, what's happening? And of course, we can double click again and adjust the out point. But what if we wanted to use this facial animation? In this case, it's just kind of idles, and I might want to use these idles on another animation that I have. For example, that boxing animation. So in that case, we can do a little hacky thing. Let's delete this animation. And we're going to go back to our content browser. We're going to go back to our motion capture. And I'm going to go in to the idle facial mocap. And you can see we have all these blend shapes. So I'm going to select all of them. Copy them, Control C. Copy. Then I'm going to go into the boxing take. Doesn't have any blend shapes, but if we paste, look, now we do have all these blend shapes, and we've added our facial animation to a take that never had facial mocap. And again, this can be super useful, especially for idols like this, I find, where maybe I just want to have blinking and things in different animations. And of course, if I go back to our sequencer and I add in our boxing animation again, it will now have the facial blend shapes that we copied and pasted onto this animation. So again, that's a little bit hacky, but it's one way to transfer facial blend shapes from, one animation to another animation. Okay, so this is the workflow if you essentially have a best case scenario and your character model is natively compatible with the UE skeletons. Again, most on the Epic Marketplace will be, but there are tons of other models out there that you may use that won't have UE4, UE5 skeletons. Daz, Mixamo, Character Creator, or custom characters that you may have bought on TurboSquid or CG Trader or Sketchfab or something. So how do we get our mocap onto custom characters that don't share a skeleton with the UE4 mesh? The answer is we're going to be using the IK Rig system that was introduced in UE5. This is the standard method of retargeting UE motion capture, so it's going to be very useful to go through. We're going to be using a Mixamo character to go through this IK Rig workflow, but this is the same workflow for other custom characters, Daz, Character Creator, as I said before. So I'm going to go grab the character mesh. There are tons of tutorials out there for how to use the auto rigger in Mixamo. There we go, uploaded correctly, even with the textures. We'll go to next. We'll do the Mixamo auto rigging system. Looking good, let's hit next. And then we are going to download this character in a T-pose. It kind of looks like it's in a T-pose already, but we actually want to go and search T-pose, add it to our character, and download. I'm going to download at 30 FPS. This doesn't really matter. Okay, let's jump back into our project. I'm just going to delete this character for now. And we're going to create a new folder for our character. Call this custom character. And we'll go to add, import. Then we're going to go find our character. In this case, it's called T-Pose 5. I should probably rename that, but in this case, I'm not going to. And this time, we want to leave on import mesh because after all, we're importing a character with a mesh. We're going to also leave skeleton blank because this is not compatible with any skeleton that we have in our project already. We're going to go down to advanced. We're going to hit use T0 as ref pose. And I'm also going to click import morph targets. It's just good to get into habit. And if you're importing a character that has facial blend shapes, you need to make sure that this is checked when you import it. And that's a custom character, remember, like a DAZ character or character creator character. We can uncheck import animations. Again, this is just our character. This is no mocap. We're gonna hit import all. And there we go. We've got our character mesh imported in a T-pose, looking good. So now we need to build an IK rig for our character so we can retarget our motion capture onto it. I'm going to right click in my characters folder. I'm gonna make sure I'm off of this menu and I'm gonna just click IK, type in IK and IK rig. I'm gonna name this IK rig, Cyber Girl, just to keep everything organized and make sure we can always find our IK rigs by typing in IK rig, and we'll open it up. So the first thing we need to do is we need to add our preview skeletal mesh. So I'm gonna go in and remember, we're going to look for our Mixamo character. Let's go find it. Here it is, T-pose 5. Let's add it in. I'm gonna resize this guy a little bit and then we'll zoom out. So now we need to do something that is standard in all retargeting workflows across all software, something called character definition. This is where we tell the computer which bone is which on our mocap and on our character, so that Unreal can copy the animation from our mocap onto the correct bones on our character. So I'm gonna start by right-clicking on the hips or pelvis and going to set retarget root. This is the retargeting root for our entire character, right? The pelvis or the hips. Next, I'm going to select all the spine bones, spine through spine 2, right click, and go to new retarget chain. So this handy little dialog pops up, and in this case, it's already correctly named, so that's great. And we're going to hit add chain. And right off the bat, you can see that we get this bone chain in here. So we're going to do this essentially for all of the bone chains that are in our character. Next, we're going to do neck and head, and new retarget chain. Head is correct, add chain. Next, we're going to do left shoulder down to left hand. So this is the left arm. New retarget chain, left arm, add chain. Now, when it comes to the fingers, sometimes they might not have the right naming by default. For example, let's go grab the thumb, right click, new retarget chain, and it's saying left arm. This is not right. We need to change this to left thumb. And we might need to do this manually depending on the type of character that we have imported. So I'll hit add chain. Then I'm gonna go to index 1 to index 3. We never want to use the fourth finger bones. They're usually unnecessary. So in general, I would just avoid them. New retarget chain, left arm, not right, left index, add chain. Middle, new retarget chain, left middle, add chain. New retarget ring, new retarget chain, left ring, add chain, and then finally the pinky. So now we have to do the same thing for the right shoulder. I'll fast forward through this. Right arm is correct. Fingers done. Now we can do the leg. We're going to go left up leg all the way down to left toe base. New retarget chain. Left leg, it's already correct. And the right, same thing, from the right up leg down to the right toe base. So now you might be wondering how I know that these are the correct names, and that's because we're matching these to the Unreal 4 IK Rig naming conventions. And we'll go through that in a moment, but this is how you want things to be named generally, I find. And the nice thing is we only have to do this once for each character, so we're not going to have to do this again. And we're not quite done, however. One thing we're going to do is also add an IK solver. And this is going to make our feet sliding very reduced. So the way to do that is we're going to go to hips, and we're going to go add new solver, full body IK. Now you can see it says missing root bone. So again, we're on the hips, but with this solver selected down here, We're going to right click and we have these new options. Set root bone on selected solver. Yes, we want to do that. Now you can see it's missing goals. So in this case, because we're just focusing on the foot sliding, you can also add these for the hands if you want, but I find that really the only thing that I need to do is add them for the feet. We're going to select left toe base because this is the last bone in our leg chains. Where are they here? See, left toe base is our leg chain. And with both of them selected, I'm going to right click, new IK goal, and it's going to ask us if we want to assign it to the retarget chain left leg. We do. And right leg, we do. And you can see right here, it added some IK goals. Now the final thing that we need to do is grab these IK goals themselves, right click, and you can see it says disconnected goal, disconnect goal from selected solver. Because we had this selected when we added the goals, automatically they've been connected to our full body IK solver. However, if we want to disconnect this just for, maybe we forgot and this wasn't selected when we added the goals, we can select the goals now and you'll see. Let's grab a goal. Oop. Doesn't do anything. But if we grab both the goals, connect goals to selected solver, now, look at this. We've got an IK goal on these feet. So now we'll save and we'll close this out. And we need to go and do the same thing for our motion capture takes. Now, fortunately, when we imported this template with our mannequins, we also got this rigs folder. And there is an IK UE4 mannequin rig that's already included. Now, the only thing that we want to change on this rig, it's nice that it's already done for us, but you can see some of these chains are different, and we have different bones here than we had on our Mixamo character. Most importantly, if we go to left arm, you can see that by default, the left arm and the right arm only go from the upper arm to the hand. Now, on our character's IK rig, we went from the clavicle to the hand. So we want to make sure that this is also set clavicle to hand. And we're going to go for the right arm, same thing. Right arm, clavicle R, right clavicle, and then the last end bone is the hand. And then I'm going to also go in, and you can see that by default, Unreal has a left clavicle and right clavicle solo chain. I'm just going to delete both of these. There we go. You can also see, however, that all of these chain names match what we did for our character. So it's going to work well when we do our retargeting. Now we can close this out. Next, we're going to go back to our main content folder and create an IK retargeter asset. So we type in IK, we go to retargeter. Again, you can actually find this under animation, retargeting, IK retargeter. We're going to call this Mocap Retarget. And we're going to open it up. So again, this is also blank when we open it for the first time. In source IK rig asset, we're going to add the IK UE4 mannequin. Again, remember, this mannequin has all of our motion capture on it from when we loaded in our mocap. You can see here we have all of our mocap down here. For target, we're going to select, what do you think? Yep, our IK rig Cybergirl, which is our Mixamo character, right? So they come in on top of each other, which is a little bit messy. If we scroll over this target mesh offset, we can just move it over a little bit. And if we click on some of these animations, this does not look right, obviously. So the reason this looks so funky is if we go back to the first frame, you can see that our character and our mocap, or our UE skeleton, have different starting poses. So we're going to need to match these to make our mocap look correct. The way that we're going to do that is we're going to go up to these three little dots by running retarget, and we're going to go to edit retarget pose. Now we can either do this on the source, which is our mannequin, or we can do it on our character. I prefer to do it on the mannequin because I think it's easier to get to a T-pose. So I'm going to select source, then I'm going to select the bones. Upper arm is the first one, for example. And I'm going to just make this into a T-pose. Hit F to jump to our bone. You can align them. You can see the bone is straight there. Everything looks good. I'm I'm going to do the same thing for the upper arm right. Let's make these bones nice and straight. And then the other thing that I like to do actually is I will go down and select the thigh. And I like to, you can see that on our character, our legs are really up and down. And this is a little bit more spread. So I'm actually going to make this into 5 degrees. And I'm just going to take these legs in a little bit. And the more that our motion capture and our character match their pose exactly, the better the motion capture is going to be. For example, you can see that I'm not touching these fingers. I could go through and, make these fingers be more aligned to the straightness of the character's fingers. But in this case, I'm not going to. And you can do that if you want to, but oftentimes I find it's fine. Now, if we go back to run Retargeter, look at this. Everything is looking correct. And we can go through and we can select all of our different animations and preview them, and everything is looking right. The other thing that we can do is we can go into our global settings, or actually our root settings, and remember those IK foot goals that we created earlier? Well, they're helping to make basically our feet sliding be reduced. And if we want to see what it's like without that, we can either blend these to the source, we can change how much the IK is affecting our character. We can actually go into the chain mappings themselves, go to left leg and right leg, turn off IK, and you can see this is what it looks like without those IK goals. The feet are moving up and down slightly more, and it's just a little bit not as exact. So I like to leave these on, but again, you can blend these in and out depending on how you're feeling, but I do think that they generally serve a purpose. Okay, so now we want to get this animation out of the retargeter. How do we do that? Well, it's super easy. We go and select all the animations that we want to export. In this case, all the Rokoko animations. And I'm going to go to Export Selected Animations. I'm going to put it in the mocap folder again because it's mocap animation. It's just on our character now. And hit Export. And there you go. You can see that if we open up these animations, we have all the animations applied to our character, and we can use these in Sequencer the same way that we used the animations before. Let's go and let's grab our character, custom character right. We'll add it into our scene. I might adjust the feet so that they're on the floor. We'll go into Sequencer, add our character named T-Pose, which isn't very good, but it's okay. We go to animation, and again, these are all the animations that we exported from the retargeter. Just as manipulatable as it was before, and really set up to just kind of keep moving. Okay, so we got animation on our character with 2 methods, but now let's talk about editing our motion capture. So this can be a huge part of working with mocap. So oftentimes there are things like intersecting body parts or something like that you need to fix in post. For casual animations, oftentimes it doesn't matter, and you don't need to do any editing. If I'm putting this up on Instagram, this looks fine. It's people watching it on their phone. But if you want to get AAA style mocap, you're probably going to need to do some editing at some point. We're going to look at 2 different ways to do mocap editing in Unreal. We're going to start with FK, or forward kinematic, because not all characters are set up for easy IK control rigs. So we've got this animation, and if we want to do some FK animation editing, again, let's go and find some clipping that we're going to need to fix. Right here it looks like. We can right click on our character, T-Pose 05, and if we go to Edit with FK Control Rig, let's click it, and it's going to ask us to basically bake down all these keys. We could also reduce the keys if we wanted to. We don't need to in this case, but I'm going to hit Create, and it's baking to the control rig. You can also see that this only baked from the in point to the out point, and actually the out point wasn't, all the way selected on our animation. We actually missed some of our animation here. It didn't bake. And so that's something very important to know, that the animation is only going to bake from the in to the out point. If we go, you can see our animation actually stops, even though our animation clip has a few more frames. Something to know for sure. What you'll also notice is that Unreal 5.3, it opened up to this animation mode. which makes things a little bit easier to do our editing. So let's go find some clipping in our clip right here, for instance. And this is very common that you're going to have clipping from your arms into your legs. And one easy way to fix this would be basically to rotate out this arm slightly so that it doesn't have this clipping. So we can go and we can select our left arm 2. And if we hit E, we can go into the rotation mode, and look, we could rotate this out. Now, if we just do that, nothing is actually going to change, because as you can see, all these bones, they have baked animation on them. So if I change one frame, even if I were to key that change, it's not going to change anything, right? It's going to still have all these old keyframes, and it's just going to jump back to the old animation. So to fix this, what we can do is if we hit plus on this FK control rig, we can add an additive layer. And I'm going to extend this out so it covers our entire animation. And what an additive layer does is it creates a layer that has no keyframes, that is non-destructive, on which, look, we can change this, and that change is going to be, global for the entire animation. If we go and, grab the spine 2 and do something really crazy, look, we still have our mocap, but we're able to make some changes to the skeleton. I'm going to undo that, of course. And this is also keyframeable. So let's say we just wanted to change this clipping right here. Well, we can select this arm. We could add a keyframe. I'm going to turn on auto keying. I'm going to go to the clipping. I'm going to change the animation slightly. And it created a keyframe because we have auto keying on. Look at that. And then right here, when we're not in danger of clipping anymore, I'm going to grab the original keyframe. I'm going to copy it. And there we go. Now we've kind of swept around the leg, you can see, and we don't have that clipping problem anymore. I generally find that it can be a safe bet just to not do any keyframes, but right off the bat, and we can go to frame 0 to do this even, right off the bat on this additive layer, we could just raise up these arms a little bit, right? And this is going to help avoid clipping on the legs. And again, it's going to be persistent throughout the entire clip. So obviously this can be useful for editing our motion capture, but it's a little bit messy because it is forward kinematic. And what forward kinematic means is that basically the bones are going down the chain. So in order to change the location of this wrist, we can't simply go and grab the left hand and just move it, right? That's not going to look right. We would have to go and we'd have to grab the upper arm, and then we'd have to grab the lower arm, and then we could change the location of the hand or something, right? If we wanted to move the hand from there to there. What's much better is if we can have an IK control system. So IK means inverse kinematics, and it basically means the chains move the other way. So we could grab this hand, move it to wherever we wanted, and the rest of the arm is going to follow that end bone. So creating one of these IK control rigs is very easy for Unreal 4 compatible characters, but not so much for custom characters like this Mixamo character, right? There's no way to really easily generate that IK control rig. So we're just going to focus on UE4 compatible characters. I'm going to actually go back to our outliner. Let's go back to our main space, and we're going to go to our sequencer. Let's delete all of this, and we don't need this. If you aren't using a UE4 or 5 compatible character, you'll have to go and create a custom control rig, which is a lot more work. We've put links in the description that are a good starting place for that though. However, if we do have a UE4 compatible character, like the one we were working with earlier, we can use this amazing procedural control rig from Alberto Flores. So let's go back to the main content level, go into our Rokoko resources, and open up this control rig just to make sure everything is working right. And you can see it's called Mannequin Control Rig. And we're just going to compile it and save it, but this looks all properly loaded in. So if you go to the marketplace, you can actually find this control rig mannequin for UE4, but this control rig is not going to work for characters that are UE4 compatible. That can be a little bit confusing, but essentially this control rig only works for the mannequin. And in our case, we don't want to animate and edit our mannequin. We want to edit a UE4 compatible character. What's so amazing about Alberto's control rig is that it is able to do this. So let's close this out. I'm going to go and I'm going to add our character mesh that is UE4 compatible, again, from earlier in the video, right here. We've already gone into this character and, made sure that it is compatible with the UE4 skeleton. We've told UE4 that it's compatible skeleton. Again, if we go to Window, Asset Details, right, compatible skeletons. This is from earlier in the tutorial. So we know our mocap is going to work with this character already. Let's go into Sequencer, drag in our character, go to the first frame, import animation. So in order to add our IK control rig, I'm just going to go to frame 0. We're going to go back and right click on our character. And this time, instead of edit with FK control rig, we're going to go to bake to IK control rig. And if you can't see the control rig that we loaded in the Rokoko resources folder, sometimes you just need to uncheck filter asset by skeleton. But in this case, we want the mannequin control rig auto setup. Let's select it. It's going to ask for the same thing, whether or not we want to bake it, we do. And remember, it's just going to go for the in and out point. So we've again, kind of not included this last bit, but that's fine. There we go. Look, we opened up again the animation mode, but now we have this IK control rig. If we grab one of these handles, look, we can move the hand around and the arm is going to follow. Now, same thing as before. If we make changes, they're not going to persist because there are already keyframes on all of these controls. So, same thing as before, we need to go up and we need to go plus on our control rig keyframes and add an additive layer. I'm going to expand this out to cover our whole animation. And now, if we make changes, they are going to persist across the entire animation. And because this is an IK control rig, we can do a lot of really interesting things that are just easier to do. This is, of course, a little bit crazy, but you can see these changes are persistent. And if we ever do anything we don't like, because it's just on this animation layer, I can just go and delete the layer and everything goes back to the way it was, right? However, we do want to make some changes and do some edits. So I'm going to go and re-add my additive layer. And the first thing we're going to do is fix some of that clipping. So right here, for example, let's fix this hand. I'm going to select this null, the left hand control null. And one thing that I like to do is I like to add an initial keyframe. This is essentially a safe keyframe, right? This is a keyframe with no changes made on it. However, we need to go and we need to fix this clipping, right? So I'm just going to move the hand out a little bit. And we're going to turn off our snapping. And we're going to add a keyframe. Again, I'm going to actually turn on the auto keyer because it's a little bit easier. And look, we've fixed some clipping. And if we want to kind of go back to how the mocap should be, we can always grab that original safe keyframe, copy it, and then paste it. Again, it looks like we have clipping for most of this take. So maybe we just want to go and change the hand a little bit more over here. I'm just using hotkeys W, E, and R to change, what mode I'm in, translate or rotate. And that way we can keyframe some simple animation, right? So you can imagine how you could go through and, maybe the head isn't looking in the right direction at a certain point. And I want to make sure that the head turns over to the left. Add a keyframe. We have the auto keyer on. Remember, always remember if you have the auto keyer on or not. But at this point, we want the character to look that way. We can keyframe that change, right? And then if we want to have the character look back, let's copy this initial keyframe. There we go. And now we can do, all sorts of edits depending on what we need. However, the really cool thing about this special IK control rig in particular is that it has a system for slaving the left and right hands together. Let's go, and if we actually click on this left hand slave and we twirl it down, you can see that we have this blend dial right here. And if we take this up to 1, it is going to basically attach or bring our hand over to that blue ball. And the really cool thing about that blue ball is that it is slaved to the red ball. and the red ball is slaved to the right hand, right? So we can essentially, and we'll disable this blend because we don't want to use it yet. Let's set it to 0. But when we go with our character and we grab the handle of the sword, we can turn on the slaving and have the left hand follow the right hand. So let me show you what I mean by this. And for this, of course, we're going to need to go and grab a sword. So I'm going to go and grab a sword and add it into my scene. A sword came with this character, coincidentally. And here we go. We've got it in our scene. Let's go to our outliner. Let's add our mech sword into our sequencer. Under the mech sword, we are going to go plus attach because we want to attach it into the right hand of our character. So I'm going to go to our character and it'll bring up a list of bones that we can actually attach this sword to. In this case, it's the right hand. As soon as I click it, we might get some bizarre kind of, translation or something. But now, once it's been attached, and we want to make sure that this covers the entire animation, now we can go and we can put it in the right location. We're just kind of going to guesstimate it at first. So this looks pretty good, but again, right, we just need to make sure the sword is oriented in the right direction. It looks like it's a little bit off still. So let's make sure it's in the right spot for our actual hand, our right hand that is holding the sword. So, right, there we go. It's right in there. Now, you can see that when we two-hand this sword, it does not work, right? Our hand is not in the right spot. It's not following the location of the right hand, and I'm talking about the left hand, right? The left hand is moving all over the place, and if we had to go in and make individual IK chain edits to make sure that this was in the right spot, for the entire animation, change it, and then we have to change it a little bit more. No. What's a lot easier is if we can slave the left hand to the right hand. And again, this control rig allows you to do that. The way that we're going to do that is I'm going to go and grab this blue ball, again, that is connected to the blue left hand. I'm going to place this on the spot that we want our left hand to be. In this case, it's right here. I'm going to turn off auto keyer for now because it's just going to mess things up. And left hand slave. So let's go to when our left hand grips the sword right here. You can see this hand kind of starts forming a fist right there, right? That's when we want it to be locked on. So I'm going to keyframe blend 0. Then I'm going to keyframe when it's locked on to 1. Now this might look a little bit funky at first because again, we need to go and we just need to make sure that this slaved hand is in the right spot. So if we move down this blue ball now, you can see that we can actually completely affect the location of this hand. So I'm going to go, and it looks like, again, the orientation of the blue ball was just a little bit funky. So let's rotate it around. And this is after I've keyframed on the slaving, right? And let's go and move this guy back a little bit. We basically want to make sure that our hand is on the sword. There we go, right? So that is in the right spot. And again, because our blue and red balls are slaved to each other, it's going to follow the right hand. Look at that. Look, the left hand is perfectly locked on to the sword handle because it is following that slaved blue ball. Now, let's say we need to go in here and this doesn't look so good, right? When it's gripping the sword. Well, we can change that by going in, grabbing the left hand null. Let's add a keyframe right here. Let's go to this spot and let's move the hand out a little bit. Let's move it here so it's not intersecting. Add a keyframe. And let's move it a little bit closer to the sword. And you can see at this point, the blending starts to happen. Oh, look at that. There we go. And we could continue to mess with this a little bit, but the point is this hand is now perfectly following the other hand. And if we need to disengage this system, see right here, in our mocap animation, we let our hands go right here. I'm going to keyframe the blending, and I'm going to keyframe it down to 0, and our hand will let go and continue doing its original motion capture. Look at that. So this is an unbelievably easy to use and effective workflow for editing your motion capture by IK Control Rig, especially when it comes to two-handed types of animations where you need one hand to follow the other hand. This is something that really doesn't exist in any other, really in a lot of other programs. So it's, props to Alberto. Such a great little asset, and we hope that, it's as useful for you all as it has been for us. Now for UE5 compatible skeletons, again, this is a UE4 compatible skeleton, right? This control rig will not work for those characters. However, there is a procedurally generated UE5 character control rig that you can use that should have been included in the template that you downloaded. Again, right here, CR mannequin body. You can see that this template may work for your UE5 compatible characters. It may not. You might need to go down some more rabbit holes to get it working, but regardless, for UE4 compatible characters, this control rig is amazing. So the last method that I wanted to cover is using Rokoko Studio to do your retargeting and then bringing in fully retargeted characters into Unreal that already have animation on them. And this might be useful for various different reasons, but one way that we can do this is for this character, for instance, I'm going to go and find the actual mesh here. Here it is. Right click, and under Asset Actions, we can hit Export, and we can export an FBX file. So I'm going to export out this FBX file, leave all this. Maybe I could change the FBX format to 2020 and hit Export. Now, if we go back to Rokoko Studio, one of the great new additions to Studio in the last few months is the ability to import characters. And again, this requires a plus plan, but if you have a plus plan, we can go and we can import that Unreal Skeleton character that we just exported. It's not going to work with all types of characters. Again, Human IK, UE Mannequin, IK Rig. Human IK is really Mixamo, so it'll work with Mixamo characters as well. But if we hit open, we know it's working if it's importing. And not everything is going to work in this method, but in this case, this character will. And now we can drag this character onto our motion capture. Here we go. It's looking good. This character actually also has blend shapes, so that will be reflected in Rokoko Studio. We'll also get our ARKit blend shapes, which is really cool. But if we want to export this out, this animation out already on the mesh, let's go to idle waiting, for instance, and I'm going to select body mesh, right? But we're not going to select override skeleton or mesh because we just want to export out the animation on this skeleton that this character has. So we're going to go and I'm going to export this out. Again, I'm going to put this in another spot because we don't want to overwrite anything. And let's export. Now we can go back and let's just create a new folder, retargeted mocap. And let's import what we just exported out of Rokoko Studio. Idle waiting. Open. We're not going to import it onto a skeleton, but we are going to import mesh. We're going to use T0 as ref pose. We're going to import morph targets because it does have morph targets. And animation, of course, we want to check. Import all. Now, this works, and you can see that we have our animation. None of these textures came up, but we could replace these textures, right? And what's nice is that we have our animation already on our character. Unfortunately, the physics won't really work that we had on that character's, arm, the little piece of cloth. But this can be a useful way to just get some animation on a character and into Unreal without doing any of the retargeting in Unreal, right? Really, this is much more useful when we have, say, let's grab a Mixamo character here. That T-Pose 05 character, right? Let's open that up. This one, because it downloaded from Mixamo with the textures, is just going to be all ready to go. Let's add it onto our actor. Let's make this guy hidden, because what's going to export out of Rokoko Studio are things that are not hidden, but anything that is visible here. So again, let's go boxing maybe this time. This looks really cool. And the other thing that we can do in Rokoko Studio that's so useful is that we can do some of our clipping fixes in here using the retargeting pose editing tool. So if we go up to actor filters and we say adjust arm, we want to adjust the arm spread. Maybe we want to, I don't know, adjust the shoulders a little bit. We could adjust the neck. These are some little cleanup things we could do in Rokoko Studio. And by doing it here, we just don't have to do it in Unreal. So sometimes this workflow can just make a little bit more sense. Again, if I export this out and import it into Unreal, it's going to come in and just be all working, right? Again, put any questions you have down in the comments below if you want to see more about that type of retargeting workflow, or check out our YouTube channel for lots of tutorials on how to do that retargeting in Rokoko Studio. So these are the best current workflows for Unreal Engine. Things change fast, so always make sure to check out our channel for updates to the workflow. But if you want to know how to retarget onto metahumans, you can check out our separate video, as well as our separate live streaming video, which covers how to do live streaming onto custom characters like this one that are not metahumans. Thanks so much for watching, and hopefully you found this to be useful. See you in the next one.